Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome! The latest monthly report for the Persistent Universe is available, so let us go through it. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support, it is truly appreciated. And if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So today I would like to break down the latest monthly report for the Persistent Universe. This covers all of the work that is going on from the various development teams working on the PU. It is a long one, but I assure you it's worth sticking with, as there is a lot of juicy work going on. So kicking off with the animation team. For the facial animations team, they worked on a large set of life and mission animations for various PU characters. On the body side, they followed the development of a new creature with the art and design teams and discussed the animation needs for when it's available. So really exciting to hear this, and we actually hear more about this specific creature a little later on in the report. It is also a harvestable, so do keep your ears peeled. Now for the character art team, they continued to develop collections of frontier and high fashion outfits. They also prepared armor variants for the upcoming Security Post Korea mission, subscriber program, and Intergalactic Aerospace Expo 2952, which is coming around November. And on the concept side, they're currently exploring gameplay armors and also creatures. So firstly, by gameplay armors, I suspect this means more armor types specifically designed to aid in specific gameplay, like mining, salvaging, and so on. But also creatures are getting a lot of love, and I'm so happy that they are now kicking this off. In fact, the animation lead did recently tweet out a job posting for a creature animator, so it looks like they're really starting to ramp up the work for creatures, and remember they do want creatures of all types, sizes, temperaments, but it has to start somewhere, and we will get to that. Now, moving on to the ship art team, they continued work on the Argo SRV, which is progressing through Greybox, with only habitation remaining. Very nice. The final art pass of an unannounced ship continued, with the bulk of the level of detail work nearing completion. Also, an unannounced ground vehicle passed its final review gate, with some small alterations to the dashboard being made to improve visibility of the speedometer, alongside small polish tasks. Now, I'm still sticking with the potential of this being a salvaging vehicle, just to bring the available salvaging vehicles on par with mining. As we know, we have the Greyka ROC, the Prospector, and the Mole. It would be nice for salvaging to get a ground vehicle alongside the Vulture and the Reclaimer. But also with the mention of the speedometer, even though all ground vehicles do have speedometers, it could be more tailored to racing, as they are trying to expand on the racing mechanic now, so we will see. Now, the resource management pass on the Hammerhead continued, with a new gravity generator room being added. The team also began implementing the new component bays. Work on the MISC Hull C continued, with progress being made on the outstanding issues on the ship. Also, the US team continued moving the Drake Corsair through final art, completing the left and right nacelles, upper and lower port wings, spine, cockpit, co-pilot exteriors, spine-mounted turret, chin-cheek mounted turret, which I believe was last week's sneak peek image, landing gear, and landing gear housing. And now they are currently polishing the exterior, with the cargo hold and loading ramp now complete. I personally suspect the Hull C and the Corsair to likely release with the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo in November, alongside these other unannounced vehicles. Although if I am correct about the ground vehicle being a salvaging vehicle, then that could be a 318 release. We will see, but that is all speculation on my part. I have no idea when any of these ships are intended to release. Finally, the team supported the Drake Vulture as it approaches release, which I do know is coming in 318. Now, for the engine segment, the physics team continued code optimizations. For the Gen 12 renderer, the transition to full Gen 12 continued, with numerous render node types ported over to the new APIs. The render to texture Gen 12 pipeline was enabled by default, and MIP map generation, gas cloud processing, and forward and tiled forward rendering were transitioned. Also, support for transient graphics render passes was added to simplify the code. Now, the Gen 12 port of atmospheric rendering was completed, and the port of volumetric cloud rendering is currently being wrapped up. Work will then commence to further improve the rendering of volumetric clouds, and I will say that I did read recently on the Star Citizen Links Discord that the new scene renderer utilizing Gen 12, which should bring a significant performance and efficiency improvement compared to the current render, is very likely to make its debut in 318. Additionally, it does also say that the clouds have had a rework and allegedly fixing the issues where they looked a bit blocky and pixelated, with one source saying that compared to the old clouds, the quality of the new clouds are more like Microsoft Flight Simulator. And so if this is the case, I am very excited to see what they look like now. And for the core engine, the team implemented a more cooperative threading approach that utilizes the parallelism of calling code to update different zones at the same time. That sentence made no sense to me whatsoever. Now on to the Arena Commander features team. They progressed with improvements for both Arena Commander and Star Marine's front-end player experience, and they say that this will make finding a match and connecting to other players a more rewarding experience. I don't know how they can make that rewarding, but additionally, map improvements are in the works following community feedback. They are also investigating the use of the in-progress radar and scanning improvements to show clouds and asteroid locations that players can use to hide in. So quite interesting, as we are still yet to see or really hear anything about what improvements are being made to the radar and scanners, and it sounds like they're already trying to utilize the work that has been done for them, even though it's not complete yet. And finally, UI enhancements were also made to the radar and scanner to help players look for targets and perform scans. Now, for the character and weapon features team, ladder traversal is getting quite a lot of improvements, and this team is adding support for entering and exiting a ladder at midpoints, so a single ladder can now serve multiple floors, and while extending this, they took the opportunity to improve the mechanics, making it possible to look around while traversing the ladder with a, most likely it says, full 360 view range while idling, so being able to almost do a full look backwards. And now with a large degree of freedom in view, the team felt that it made sense to allow the player to jump from the ladder in the direction that they're looking in to further increase options when traversing game environments. Also, all the animations and poses are currently being updated as well, alongside early exploration into allowing item usage, such as weapons while on ladders. So this is really great to hear for expanding and improving the ladders, as right now they are pretty much a locked animation with no way to maintain your awareness or even do anything when you're attacked. So having the ability to properly look around and keep your situational awareness while on the ladder is going to be very useful. Being able to shoot while you're on a ladder will also stop us being so vulnerable. But another plus side of the 360 view is being able to navigate and use it to jump off in locations, which when exploring derelict ships or buildings will be very useful for finding locations for hiding spots. But also being able to step off the ladder at certain heights would be great for ships of different floors, having components on different levels and using one ladder to reach them all. So great news to hear that ladder improvements are making headway. No idea when this feature is coming, but ladders tier 1 on the progress tracker does come to an end in September. So fingers crossed we can have this functionality in 3.18. Now, for gameplay features, they continued with the resource network work, with relay items for the Hammerhead and Hull A being updated to align with the vehicle's content team's work mentioned previously. They then started looking into the setup of the Crusader Ares and other similar sized ships. So basically adding these relay node locations to the Hull A as well, we've seen it on the Hammerhead, and also how smaller ships like fighters will get their systems added, because obviously they don't have the interior space as the Hammerhead or Hull A do. So interesting to see how they figure that one out, or where the relay nodes will be located, whether we need to go outside or access them from the cockpit, but it's great to hear that this system is moving along pretty quickly, in fact. Now, a solution was also found for smaller items that connect to a ship's power, like coffee machines and small lamps, which will be utilised in the upcoming colonial outposts. And as we have heard in the past, so long as the item that you want to power is within the room or a certain proximity of power, it will be able to be turned on. Like a lamp could be placed on a desk in a room that's receiving power, it will work. You could move it to a bookcase or basically anywhere that is getting power and it will work. But if you put it on the floor outside where it isn't receiving power, then it won't. Now, I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than that, but this will likely apply to all appliances and devices in the future, and will just make customizing our ship interiors, our homesteads, anywhere really, to be so much more unique to us and not have predefined points or locations to place these items. Anyway, moving on. Work on life support was finalized and is now awaiting downstream support, and in the meantime, work began on the gravity generator. So really exciting hearing that the work from the gameplay feature team on life support is now done. Of course, other teams do still need to do their work on it, but the gameplay features work is now done, And it also looks like the next item to get the attention is the gravity generator. So again, another system here making great progress pretty quickly. And finally for this team, salvage is now in the QA test request phase, which involves fixing bugs and other issues. So just testing, fixing, the actual system is complete now, barring any fixes that need doing. Now next up we have the mission features team, who worked on a variety of new missions and features. They also took part in the launch of Siege of Orison and planned improvements based on feedback, with the team saying, as the roadmap states, we are working on packing more content into Korea and the prison, and we are creating mission modules that can be placed on Orison's platforms that can occupy anything from a single building to an entire platform. So really interesting to hear what they're coming up with here. And it looks like there will be many more missions of varying scales, localized to landing zones like Orison, from small single buildings to entire platforms, which could be all sorts of different missions. Not necessarily combat, it could be investigation, it could be delivery, could be engineering. The skies are the limit. Now they also brought various teams together to discuss solving combat logging and are currently making a workable pitch. So again, really happy to hear this, as they need to stop combat logging, as it's very important that players cannot do that. So it'll be interesting to hear what they come up with. Now the team are currently investigating how to lessen the impact of crime stats obtained through bugs, and in pursuit of this, they worked on a change that will make crime stat 1 and 2 not cause security or allow players to attack, meaning players will be able to request landing and reach the kiosks to pay off their crimes. And this is planned to release for 3.18, provided it does not cause any negative knock-on effects. Now this, I feel, could be a great way to alleviate this whole one location to remove a crime stat issue, as I'm still on the fence about it. I'm happy to see what impact it has, but ultimately one location sounds a bit odd. But either way, getting a crime stat of level 3 and above would generally be more common of someone who has bad intentions and not necessarily accidentally or through bugs. Of course, it's not as black and white as that, there are other edge cases, but players are not immediately hunted or left unable to do anything when it wasn't their intention, which I feel makes sense. Crime stat 2 being payable is a great idea, so we will see how that impacts this as well, but very happy to hear that this is an option. It'll be interesting just to see how this whole change-up plays out. Now the team also prototyped a new time trial race, with the first iteration not likely to have leaderboards, but it should allow for accurate time measurements, and then leaderboards, new tracks and vehicle types will come in a later patch. They also investigated allowing players to rent and spawn the necessary vehicles at the race location for ease of entry. So I really like the sound of this. I am actually quite into racing. I haven't done a lot of it, but I love the thought of it. So having this ability to rent a decent racing ship down by the tracks and then actually compete and set time trials and then compete against your friends and so forth is a great idea. Now on top of this, the team also worked on the game design documentation and foundation work for Bounty Hunting version 2. Now this is nearing completion, they say, which includes bounty drop-offs and the use of virtual NPCs. Also, a new investigation mission type entered the prototyping stage and is one of the most complex the team has ever tackled, it says. So firstly, great to hear the plan for Bounty Hunting version 2 is now in the works. This has been something that I have been really waiting for before I properly delve into bounty hunting, as it's a bit rinse-repeat at the moment. But listening to Tony Zurevek's plan for full-on bounty hunting and the cat-and-mouse gameplay, tracking, evading, using logic and your wits, plus different apps and informants, this should be expanding on both NPC and player bounty hunting, which has the potential for some incredible gameplay of not just flight bounty hunting, but actually going planetside and chasing them through the streets or using non-lethal weapons to arrest them. We will actually hear more about bounty hunting and how we will be dropping off bounties. It is so exciting hearing that this bounty hunting work is now starting to kick off. Definitely won't be coming this year, but it does have a lot of potential for next year. Anyway, moving on to the vehicle features team, they focused on their new multi-function displays and integrated ship UI systems. The team solved technical problems relating to MFDs and nailed down detailed designs for various elements. They're also working closely with the EUPU team on the resource network system, which involved integrating various vehicle features with resource networking and having them exchange things like power and coolant, alongside updating and improving the design of how various items interact with resources. And finally, significant research went into improving combat AI for fighters, with the team researching things that they can do and making plans for how to implement them. So it's going to be pretty impressive once the ships have their full resource network systems working, with all the components doing what they're supposed to do, reacting systemically to each other, as well as the various devices and items that we can buy for our ships to customize them, with relay nodes and opening new stations and having an engineer on board. Things are really ramping up for our ships, and it is going to feel so different to what they're like now. They will feel so much more personal to us. Now, for the graphics, visual effects programming, and planet tech team, the damage map tech for salvaging is approaching the end of feature development and is running into the bug fixing phase, and with all the required tech coming together, the team began testing the persistence of damage maps for the first time, highlighting additional improvements to be made. Damage map persistence will soon be ready for enabling, allowing wider testing by QA. So this is the tech that we will see when we are scraping the hulls of the various ships in 3.18. With QA testing hull scraping, it says improvements were made to the gameplay values and how they can be debugged, and on the visual side, graphics are currently prepping to allow vehicle art to iterate on and fine-tune the damage map visuals. Very much looking forward to seeing how detailed the scraping of a hull looks. Will be pretty cool, I reckon, and quite therapeutic, I'm sure. Now, progress was made on porting particles to Gen 12, including mesh and sub-mesh particle rendering, and bringing them to feature parity with legacy particles. Also, several lighting and shadow update passes on gas clouds were ported to Gen 12 too. Optimizations were made to the clip volume submission and scattering injection stages for volumetric fog. Also, progress began on an edge-highlighted rendering mode for objects that would normally be occluded or culled by walls to support the FPS scanning of other players and NPCs. Now, these new radars and scanners and FPS radars and whatnot cannot come soon enough. Really looking forward to seeing more detail on this and how they will work with the different signatures and different devices that we could have, because the gameplay potential or even necessity for being able to scan and whatnot planetside in FPS and on ships kind of impacts a lot of mechanics. The Rastar tool received a useful tech refresh to make it usable with built-in editor tools, while additional efforts were made to improve stability, usability, and responsiveness. Now, Rastar is the tool that devs use to build and place the various outposts and building types, which one day players will use themselves in a different fashion, I'm sure. Anyway, moving on to the lighting team, they spent time on the new cave system, which allowed them to differentiate from the typical artificial lighting usually seen around the verse. And aside from this, they further worked on Pyro, contributing to some of the new locations' impressive visuals. It is a shame that these new sandy caves won't have any set missions to go there, but I think it will still be very enjoyable exploring them, and who knows what missions players will create with the use of persistent entity streaming, hiding stashes and items inside caves, also with creatures on the way. More on that very soon. So moving on to the EU Locations team, they spent the month working on outlaw themes for the colonialism outposts, which will be darker and more dangerous places to explore, and we did see some of this on Inside Star Citizen recently. They do look very ominous. They also began whiteboxing various new modules for outposts, including landing areas, smaller habitations, refineries, and ore extractors. And again, we saw some of this on Inside Star Citizen with the repair stations planetside, which I love, and refineries, so that players can build their empires, it said. Anyway, white box work continued on upcoming space sandbox locations that will provide more interesting opportunities for ship-based exploration and gameplay too. They are really creating many locations of all types, not just planetside, but in space, which should help to expand on the points of interest and places that players can visit, exploration, general infrastructure in certain systems and locations as well. The landing zone team progressed with Ruin Station, which is the main space station in Pyro, focusing on art for the external industrial areas and damaged locations. Inside, cold route areas were injected with extra side routes and activities, plus exterior access hatches were developed to give extra access options, while exploratory work was performed to craft ideas for the shantytown habitations. So quite a lot to digest there. Firstly, it's great to hear that Ruin Station is now in the works and coming along, but it also sounds like it'll be quite a substantial station with many areas to explore, sneak around. Also hearing about exterior access hatches, which are likely used to bypass the gang security checkpoints, could help towards getting customs in planetside locations, like Lorville. We heard a while back that Lorville will have areas and tunnels where smugglers can get in and out of without having to go through the customs areas. But also the last point to touch upon is the shantytown where the residents live. Would be great to explore that. Hopefully one day, having a full population living there, maybe giving out missions, or even owning our own shack would be great. I do wonder if we will see more on Ruin Station at CitizenCon this year, or whether it's not going to be quite ready yet. Anyway, time was dedicated to the revamped underground facilities, with the team whiteboxing the remaining layouts, with a focus on how the player navigates the surface structure down to the top of the physical elevator, with work also being done on the entrance lobby and elevator entrance room, with the final pieces getting close to being up and working in Whitebox. Now I know they are working on new underground facility types, but hearing that they are actually changing the area's topside is good to hear, as having just a door that leads directly to the elevator is a little odd, and having a more realistic lobby, for example, makes much more sense. So looking forward to seeing how this changes up the feeling of entering the facilities, alongside the new underground facilities as well, and maybe having a security team upstairs or on top of the elevator shaft would be interesting, and having NPCs walking around outside. Also, it does say that the devs are exploring the visual targets for final art, with new asset kits being created and worked up to a high polish, as well as a push on interactable props featuring modular machines, interactable cupboards, lockers, switches, and fuses. So yeah, not only are the entrances and interiors getting a lot of updates for these underground facilities, but having these new interactive elements will expand on the approach for the missions, but also likely add further opportunities to looting and more. For example, you could maybe turn off the light switch, or power down a certain machine to distract the guards, or maybe take them over and store your own gear in there. Now, different initiatives were explored for adding to landing zones and feature work. Tasks for this year's Intergalactic Aerospace Expo were started, and a new fuel badge for Orison is now complete and will be used for future mission types. Maybe it could get captured and we need to board while it's still flying around and free it from the pirates. That would be pretty cool. If you have any ideas of what badge missions you would like to see, do drop them in the comments below. I would love to hear them. Now, it also says that pre-production began for the new Law and Bounty offices, which will be found around the system, and is where bounties can be taken to and new bounty missions can be found. Now, as mentioned earlier, this is really exciting to me. As we know, they are working on Bounty Hunting version 2, which will include capturing bounties and taking them to these new Law and Bounty offices, so that they can then be processed and sent to prison. Hopefully one day they will actually be flown in prisoner ships, transport ships, to Klesha physically. Whether or not they do that though, I don't know. But also getting missions there could be pretty cool. If you imagine getting all dressed up in your bounty hunting outfit, thinking I'm going to go and capture some bad guys, heading to the local bounty office and checking the jobs there that are available, while other player and NPC bounty hunters are about doing the same thing, choosing a job, getting kitted out for that job and heading out. Oh, it sounds so cool. Can't wait. Finally, for the EU location team, whitebox improvements to Korea continued to support the changes coming in 3.18, plus spawn closets were added to all landing zones, and improved signage was prototyped for Area 18 to help new players. Now, these new spawn closets getting added to landing zones should not be underplayed, as this is the starting point of getting a proper dynamic population to all landing zones, plus the eventual addition of security and police forces, which will then mean the removal of the artificial armistice restrictions, so players will be physically able to draw a weapon and shoot if they choose, but by doing so, you are then opening yourself up to be attacked or arrested, and the dynamic population work on the progress tracker in fact came to a close in July, so it could be with 3.18 or shortly after, with persistent entity streaming helping to alleviate many of the issues that we see with AI today. Having actual NPC populations at landing zones would be quite phenomenal to see. Now, moving on to the Montreal Locations team, they dedicated time to debugging and polishing several content elements, including the Daymar Derelict Settlement, which is nearing completion. The Crash site released in January was upgraded with AI loot and other features, while the Derelict Reclaimer Settlement was updated as well, but it doesn't say in what way. The art team continued creating a wider library of habitations that will be used in upcoming derelict settlements. This will allow the team to create more diverse settlements with different gameplay opportunities. Plus, the ongoing rework of Lorville's cityscape is progressing well and is now in the grey box phase. The team are currently adding high-frequency detail and landing pads and connecting the various neighbourhoods together. So, pretty interesting this. Firstly, the new neighbourhoods coming to Lorville, like new various city districts, I guess, which is going to expand Lorville City in a big way, it seems, but also having landing pads, so no longer do we have to always go to Tisa Spaceport to land. We could maybe land temporarily at a different neighbourhood. I do wonder if this will mean roads as well could be possible for Lorville, or even that shanty town on the outskirts of Lorville getting its residents. That would be interesting. But either way, really interested to hear more about these updates and changes to Lorville. And don't forget, they will be doing the same kind of revamps to all main cities, so do expect quite a big expansion to all the cities that we have. Finally, they also kicked off building interiors, with the first steps being prototyped. So this is also for Lorville, well, everywhere really. We saw it actually on Inside Star Citizen for Orison, but it's the addition of interior spaces around the cities to provide more mission locations, like delivery missions, repair missions, kidnapping missions even, and many more. So big changes coming to Lorville, and eventually the rest of the main cities. Now, for the Montreal in-game branding team, they completed tasks for the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo and are currently working on a new signage pass for various landing zones as part of the new player experience, with the goal to make it easier for new players to find their way around the PU's various landing zones. For the narrative team, alongside various mission design teams, they worked on new content for upcoming patches, including the expansion coming to Security Post Correa and Klesha Prison, and discussed adjustments to existing dynamic missions. They also explored narrative's needs for some environmental missions currently in development, and while they don't have contracts or objectives like traditional missions, the team will still work closely with design to ensure the missions are presented with a strong sense of flow and fits within the universe. I do wonder what these environmental missions are. They do sound kind of intriguing. But for an all-new mission type, the team finished a full text pass and were able to make revisions after playing through an in-game prototype. Narrative also assisted in writing text to support several in-development game features like hacking and salvaging, as well as writing names and descriptions for dozens of props, items, weapons, vehicles, armor, and clothing. Talking of hacking, we haven't heard anything about this recently, as last we heard it was taken off the roadmap to be fleshed out and polished up in Squadron first, and then brought to the PU, so hopefully it's getting around to that time where it can actually make its way into the PU. But quite impressive, everything in Star Citizen's verse is established in lore first before making its way to us in the verse, so a lot of great work from narrative there. The team also spent time reviewing AI wildlines, with the team saying that they hope it improves the player experience when interacting with NPCs, either in landing zones or in combat. And I would say it will be very nice to bring a bit more diversity to the NPCs, as it gets very repetitive and pretty irritating, in fact, when they all say the same thing, or in way of service beacons, they're all the same person. So a bit of diversity there will be great. Now, on to the Interactables team. They have some very interesting things to say, in particular about creatures. Firstly, the team developed prototypes for deployable props, which were shown on Inside Star Citizen, which I'm not exactly sure what they were. Could be things used to breach doors. I must have forgotten, so please do remind me what they're talking about here in terms of deployable props. But after this, it says the team worked on their first harvestable, with them saying, "We've worked diligently to bring some life to the verse in the very first of its kind, a bug harvestable. You can find these little critters in the new caves dotted around Stanton." So this is the Ranter, which is an isopod that is responsible for all of that dung that we can harvest in the caves. And this is massive news, as it appears it will be the first creature in the verse, and they look kind of like alien facehuggers, but with a hard shell, so pretty scary and creepy looking, but I really can't wait to hear more about these and what their behaviors are like, whether they are dangerous or they just run away or curl up. So incredible to finally see a creature making its way into the verse, and I look forward to hearing more about it, but also as they are harvestables, we should be killing them, capturing them, selling them, who knows. Now, alongside harvestables, the team looked into consumables that players can find throughout Pyro to keep themselves alive, like with this image showing some weird jellified food blocks. I'll stick to my burritos, thank you. Now, for the Montreal Tools team, they released Mighty Bridge version 0.6 to the dev team, which adds new functionality. Firstly, version 2 being the object spawner, which allows the team to spawn multiple layers of objects on geometries and planet surfaces, and secondly, the cable generator, which generates complex cables from a simple spline. I think both of these, we have actually seen them on Inside Star Citizen recently, as these sort of geometry layers on outposts. The team is also nearing completion of the first version of the Procedural Locations creation tool, which will allow them to create and edit simple layouts of space stations in minutes, dramatically decreasing the time it takes to make stations out of existing modules. Finally, they're also in the final push of the first version of the tool that will help to create derelict settlements, and the goal of this iteration is to be able to create 80% of a derelict settlement procedurally, which will then allow artists more time to polish and finish the location. And reaching this goal will mean that the derelict settlements will take weeks rather than months to create. So it's becoming very clear that the speed at which CIG can build anything from settlements, caves, space stations, and eventually planets and full systems will drastically speed up, and all this time spent developing the tools instead of the locations means that quality will be maintained, but quantity will drastically increase. Now, for the tech animation team, they released the revamped Loadout pipeline in Maya, which will dramatically speed up the loading of complex Maya assets and accurately reflect their current state in-game. Plus, the team began consolidating all of the new heads that they would like to appear in-game, hopefully mine is included in this, which involves processing a lot of the old and new data along with the alignment to deliver on the requirements for both parts of the game. And so far, they say 60 heads are now needed to be scanned, created, rigged, and integrated into the DNA gene pool to achieve this vision. I do wonder if they will ever have the opportunity for backers to get their heads scanned again. I know they want to, but they say it's a real long, arduous process, transporting all the 60 SLR cameras in the rig, and I know many of you want that opportunity as well, so fingers crossed they can find a way. Now, moving on to the Montreal Online Services team, they fixed bugs on the entity graph and login flow, and worked alongside the team in Austin on testing various deployment options and performance of the login flow service. Significant progress was also made towards the new fleet service and shard manager, both needed for persistent entity streaming, and are almost ready for internal demo. Development of private lobbies began too, which will add new matchmaking and gameplay options for Arena Commander. Next, we have the UI team, who continued to push forwards with features on the new star map, implementing 3D text and shader effects for space clouds. Still no idea or indication as to when this is finished, but the map and radar work on the progress tracker does show that it comes to completion at the end of September, so fingers crossed that is all the work done before they can start implementing it into the game, but we will just have to wait and see if that is the case. Also for UI, the artists worked on a range of concepts for terminal screens in different locations around the universe, and several bugs were fixed. And finally, the focus remains on adjusting the existing loadout systems ready to support persistent streaming. Now, onto the final team, which is the visual effects team. For the visual effects concept team, they continued to iterate on quantum travel effects, which involved collaborating with the visual effects artist to prototype the effects in-game. The team also added effects to several new modular locations, including some crashed and derelict spaceships, and they also began working on 2 new vehicles. Finally, work continued on salvage effects, specifically the hull scraping laser used by some vehicles. So there we have it. What a monster of a monthly report. There is so much information in there, it's hard to just take it all in, but creatures, new wrecks, space stations, city updates, gameplay updates like bounty hunting beginning its journey, points of interest planetside, Pyro, and so much more. There is a ton of work going on right now, and with 4.0 expected next year, much of this will make its way into the game as well. This is pretty much the calm before the storm, in my opinion, and once 3.18 gets the ball rolling any day now, the winds will begin to pick up. Anyway, that was this most recent monthly report. If you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. We have reached 50,000. Thank you so much for achieving that. Now it is a push for 100,000. Also, do come and hang out over at twitch.tv/supermacbrother. I was hoping to stream today, but I think this video is going to take all my time today to get up. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour. Tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a big thank you to my patrons and channel members for making these videos possible. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.